NFL podcast. Loves a 50 burger.
And we got a couple today. Welcome to the Around the NFL podcast, not from the Chris Wessling podcast studio, but remotely across the Southland. This is Dan Hansis, joined with heroes Mark Sessler, Greg Rosenthal. Mark, you promised that you'd be back despite the COVID, and you were a man of your word. Oh, what a warrior.
Yeah, what a warrior. I got rid of that cough, which I thought would be unpleasant / unrewarding to anyone listening. So that's mostly gone. So the rest of it, I mean, I feel like a piece of junk floating through space, but I can do saying that. So,
space junk.
We just have you on for your looks, though, Mark. That's like you could just be on mute and just be our man candy.
I see what you want.
So, all right. Listen, we are powering through like the NFL. I'm not feeling great right now. Greg, completely indestructible. I mean, that guy, is he even human? We've been asking that for years, and now we might have some proof. But Mark and I are both here, the whole gang together. And yes, week 17 is nearly in the books now. And yet the regular season has one more week to go. But where we stand now, we have some clarity after Sunday. We're going to go through all the games, as we always do, of course. But we have 6 of the 8 divisions decided. So congratulations to the Bengals, Titans, Chiefs, Cowboys, Packers, Bucks, the AFC East and the NFC West still to be determined. And we have some playoff heat right now in terms of the wild cards as well, which is a lot of fun. We're going to get into all of it. And usually, Greg, I like to have like a throw it to Rosenthal to give us. He was like the prototype for the Karnacki, Steve Karnacki, and give us all the computations. But does
that guy even know football? I mean, I have questions.
He knows numbers, but it's fairly straightforward. The Colts beat the Jaguars next week; they get a wild card spot. Then you have the Raiders and Chargers playing next week, and they better be in prime time. That's a win and in. Most likely. Arizona's going to make it in the wild card, and then you have Philly, New Orleans, and San Francisco. 2 of those 3 teams are in. Am I missing anything, Greg?
No, it's, I believe, one of the quieter Week 18s. Well, it's the only Week 18 we've ever had, but it's one of the quietest.
It's also the loudest Week 18 as well.
Right. I think so much was decided on Sunday in such a manner that there's not as much drama going into the final week as there could be. But that's fine. We'll still have a couple little things.
By its nature, wouldn't an extra week of football, let's say it went 25 weeks, we'd get closer and closer to having no spicy final week scenarios. So
I think it's just random. It's just random because of the results today, how it fell. But there's still some pretty good stuff.
There you go, Greg. Ever the company man. And Mark, I imagine, although disappointment, the Cleveland Browns eliminated from contention today, it didn't sound like you were looking forward to a primetime game against the Steelers so much, especially in your weakened state physically. Now all that, it's all just watching it for fun, I guess.
Yeah, fun would be the key word of tomorrow night's Browns-Steelers game. But I would just say that, like, one thing I've been saying all along is I want the teams that deserve to get in there to be there. Now, there's a couple arguments for or against some of the people still in contention, but watching like Cincinnati, watching some of these teams rise up, I don't need Cleveland in there. They didn't deserve it. They didn't earn it.
The Cincinnati
Bengals.
But
you can knock out the Steelers officially on Monday night. That is kind of fun. That is fun.
I mean, it's fun. I feel like you're going to have more fun with that than I am because it's a dark note compared to where we were a year ago.
All right, I was teed up nicely to get into the Bengals, but that's fine. I'm going to move forward. I'm going to process it and say...
But you didn't. By saying that, you didn't move forward.
It was already ruined. It was already taken away from me, but it's okay. We're just grinding through.
I attempted.
I know. You set it up beautifully, Mark. I'm like Robert Saleh in the post-game press conference. I'm not saying who did it, but everybody knows who did it. It was Mike LaFleur. All right, let's get to Cincinnati, where the Bengals made a statement that they are a team to be reckoned with in January.
2 seconds left. This will be a 20-yard attempt from the middle of the field to send the Bengals into the postseason. Kevin Huber is ready. Catches the snap, puts it down. The kick is on its way. It is good! The Cincinnati Bengals clinch the AFC North and prove they can beat anybody as they rally from 14 down on 3 separate occasions and beat the Kansas City Chiefs.
No, Bongos right out the gate. Dan Horde and Dave Lapham with a call for WCKY and just unsolicited advice, production advice to the people over at WCKW. Let's get some parabolic mics on the field. I want to hear Cincinnati going off in that spot. Evan McPherson kicked the 20-yard field goal as time ran out. The Bengals earned their first AFC North title and playoff appearance in 6 years with a truly wild 34-31 win over the Chiefs. This was a game where Jamar Chase set an NFL rookie record and Bengals franchise record with 266 yards receiving and 3 touchdowns on 11 catches. Burrow threw for 466 and 4 scores. This, of course, a week after Burrow threw for 50 or 540, something like that. So, I mean, listen, this is where we are. The Bengals rallied from 3 14-point deficits against the AFC West champion Chiefs, who, Greg, by the way, had won 8 straight before this game. And now you look at the Bengals as a team, man, if they could beat the Chiefs in a shootout like this, they could beat anybody.
They really can. They did the game plan in the second half that so many teams have tried, which is like keep the ball away from the Chiefs. It's like, that's good, but you have to score touchdowns every time you have the ball. The Chiefs only got the ball 3 times in the second half. The Bengals, it's not like they were playing slow, but they go 5 minutes. They go 4.5 minutes. They go 6 minutes on their last 3 drives, score on them all. And the play of the game is that 3rd and 27 to Jamar Chase. I don't know how you leave, I think it was Charvarius Ward in single coverage against Jamar Chase on 3rd and 7 from midfield at a point when you can get off the field. It was a crazy setup. It was a great play, though, by Jamar Chase. Great recognition by Joe Burrow, and I hate always making it about the coaches. Ultimately, you need a quarterback and a receiver who can convert that play, and they did it.
Tony Dungy was going nuts on as much as Tony Dungy can go nuts in any capacity, but he was fairly animated on NBC Football Night in America pregame show. He couldn't believe the defense Kansas City stayed in, not just on that play, but throughout the game in man coverage, not giving the cornerbacks help, especially on a day where Jamar Chase went completely nuclear, and you knew anytime it was thrown his way, it was going to be a big play. I believe there were 6 plays of 30-plus yards by Cincinnati's offense in this game, Mark.
Yeah, and it's, it's consistency now, because we saw it a week ago. We saw it against the Steelers twice. We saw it against the Ravens in the first game, and it's kind of what got me excited about him way back when. Not me alone, but it was like there is no way to kind of predict what the ultimate playing power of this Bengals team is, and what you see from Burrow over the last 2 weeks. I get that we all agree that he's a top 5 quarterback right now and an MVP candidate, but it's like there's no reason to think he couldn't even double or triple in what he's doing. I mean, he's unbelievable. And their big playability, this has to be a Chiefs team thinking, wow, this is what we used to do to other people. Ooh. We used to put them into a fix that they could not get out of mentally. And I liked Zach Taylor at the end of the game in the interviews. He was emotional. He said, we've been through a lot. And I mean, he's hung on to a job status last couple years before this year, where I'm sure that was not easy. But secondly said, we knew that we had to go in there and go for it in tough situations. I think they've become much more aggressive than they were at other times in the season when they kind of took their foot off the gas a little bit. And I'm with them that you come out of this with this result, it should confirm something to everyone, because whether the Chiefs are still that high watermark to beat them, it's not last year's Chiefs, but they were as hot as anyone on defense. Their offense was heating up, and the Bengals went and outclassed them. I couldn't be more impressed, and I'm actually quite happy for the Westling clan, even though I joined the Westlings in locking up the wrong team in this.
Ooh, yeah, we'll get to that in a minute. I want to say one thing about Zach Taylor.
They didn't lock up the Chiefs, to be kidding. That was me.
Oh well, they would never do
such a thing.
Look at that, we got a double.
I cannot express to you how much I hated what Zach Taylor did at the end of the game. 4th and inches with under a minute left in a tie game. Cincinnati decided to go for a touchdown instead of kicking the McPherson field goal. And Joe Burrow throws incomplete in the end zone. The Chiefs get flagged for illegal use of hands. Burrow's limping on the sideline. They call on Brandon Allen to kneel twice, and then McPherson kicks the field goal. And I don't know, man. I couldn't believe that they put themselves in that position. Imagine what happens there if there's no flag that goes down and the Chiefs take over and win that game. But I guess there is the other way to look at it. Again, like, you have so much faith in your guys, but I thought that was crazy talk what they did there, and they got away with it. Well,
and there was a penalty the play before. They went for it twice. There was
right.
offsetting penalties on the Chiefs and the Bengals. It was a crazy sequence. Romo was wondering if that they were intentionally not trying to score on the first two plays.
I didn't buy that, did you?
Which I didn't. I think they were trying to score, but I understood what he was saying, because if ever there was a let the other team score a touchdown, that was a possibility for Reed there. I actually think he made the right call because of what happened. Like, you could see what happened, that to still keep playing defense. But I agree, that was a crazy situation, but it was a sign of how much more they trust their offense than their defense. When you look at the box score of this game, Chiefs have 10 QB hits and 4 sacks. The Bengals barely touched Patrick Mahomes, and yet which is the quarterback with 444 yards? It really shows you like how good Joe Burrow is under pressure. It's not like his offensive line was playing well, and he is willing to stand in there and take the hits. And Mahomes, even with a good running game today, I guess you can't put anything on the offense. It's asking a lot to be absolutely perfect. They had like 8 drives and scored 31 points, but they weren't the explosive team. I think you said it well there, Mark, that they're not as an explosive as a team as the Bengals have been this year.
That was one of the best games I've ever seen from a wide receiver. Jamar Chase, his ability to just use his speed to pull away from cornerbacks and safeties that have an angle on him, his ability to make plays when a receiver is draped on him in coverage, his ability to find a seam and then just disappear behind a secondary and take off. I mean, it was absolute dominance, and it does remind you again that Joe Burrow, I love this guy. This guy, Joe Burrow, he's so fun. He's such a great leader of a franchise. He pushed for his old college teammate, Jamar Chase, to be the first pick, 5 overall in April. And now he has his guy, and he's showing the whole world that as good as Penei Sewell can be, this was absolutely the right move. After the game, Joe Burrow, who, again, he plays with a little bit of swagger and a chip on his shoulder, was soaking in the glory.
Yeah, I said it in the preseason. We were talking about the playoffs, and I said, we're gonna goal is the playoffs, and the easiest way to do that is to win the division. And everyone kind of laughed at us a little bit, but we knew the kind of team we had, the kind of guys in the locker room that we had, and we knew we could go out and do
it. He's also in the locker room afterwards doing like his LSU Get the Gat dance. He's got a cigar. It's all amazing. It's easily the high water mark of this Bengals team since they had so much hope when Carson Palmer was young going into that 2005 season playoff game. And I think right back to that season, too, Carson Palmer was the 3rd best quarterback in the league, kind of by consensus that year. It was Brady, Manning, Palmer. And now here we are. I think Joe Burrow is going to get some MVP votes now. He would be 3rd in my mind. I still would have Rodgers 1, assuming he finishes this out strong. I think Brady's just had a better season overall, and the breadth of the season has to count. But I'm sure Burrow's going to get some love. But he's at least the number 3 quarterback. They're right back there. And Chase, you mentioned, he's going to win the Offensive Rookie of the Year because of today, if there was any doubt about it. And I think there was going into this week. He's going to win it now.
Sorry, it also, excuse me, that's absurd. It also shows you how
you
far...
can edit that out.
Yeah, I mean, get rid of that. See, that's what I'm talking about.
No, it was too wonderful. I loved it.
Nobody needs it. But, I mean, back in the preseason, like... the Burrow Chase thing was getting killed for the idea that like it's too cute to team up with your college wide receiver, roommate, and trying to get the team to do that when you could have had this like stalwart left tackle. Burrow's knee was an issue. Chase wasn't playing well back in the summer, and months later it's totally transformed. I do want to see if anything comes out of this Burrow injury that we saw at the end of the game. He looked fine walking around, but I don't know.
He said it was fine.
He said it also wasn't the surgically repaired knee. It wasn't the surgically repaired knee. That's good. The fact that he wasn't getting treated after the game and he was dancing, that was a good sign. And, speaking of signs, Greg, I think you should have taken a sign. Mark, you're off the hook on this because you weren't involved in the conversation. But speaking of signs, I did give you a sign, Greg, that maybe it was time to get behind the Bengals on Thursday's podcast. Let's listen in. I don't feel like this is the 85 Bears. This is not the 2000 Ravens, and I could see Burrow moving. I like a shootout here, Greg, and I like the Bengals in like a 34-31 win that changes the temperature in the AFC.
34,
Got the score
31.
right. Got the score right.
Great job, Dan.
You don't get to play back a Thursday prediction unless you get the score right. That feels like a fair rule to follow on the show.
Well, incredible work.
This is really more for Mark because you also buried him in the lock standings with this one. Ooh, that was a good one.
I did a bad job. I honestly, I would have taken an L because I completely forgot about it. Outside of going for like a Monday night thing, Dan asked like, "Did you do a lock?" And so
sportsmanship.
8 minutes before. Well, you also, I think, psychologically pushed me into a scenario where I was panicking, looking at like 18 spreads that had moved into unlockable territory by Sunday, and picked this Chiefs team. And I was thinking, like, why did I do that?
Erica's shaking her head. She doesn't even get why you're throwing that at me.
I mean, it was a logical thing. They were up two touchdowns, multiple times in the game. You just got the L.
I have stopped seeking any form of enjoyment. I told you that.
I went from 2 games down to 2 games up in 4 weeks. So this
believe
has been
me, Dan, like you've been tweeting about it all day long. I think everyone is extremely aware. Like, oh, do I have a chance of getting the most locks in a season? Like, is this guy actually tweeting this now in live time? It is an unbelievable.
What's the answer? The answer is no. The answer is no because I think I only lost 3 last.
Mark, first of all, Mark, are you okay?
I am allowed to. I just thought that the hubris was on next. It was like next level. We get it. You're doing well in an in-house pick'em tournament. We're very excited for you.
I just asked the question at 13-4, and
it
turns out that Greg.
No, you didn't. You didn't just ask a question. That's.
I missed this.
Framing
I'm so
you as
happy
like
this
Mr.
is
In Control
happening.
guy. Like it was an absurd, poor sportsmanship tweet.
Anyway, Greg, while Mark melts down, I want to tell you that the record is 17 wins in a season set by you, sir, last year. So I would have to, I guess, win out. But, what are you going to do? But I have buried Mark, and that's good. Let us now take a break and then continue on.
Tyler takes the snap, short set, lobs it deep near side at the 1-yard line. Oh, what a catch! Antoine Wesley into the end zone for a touchdown. How did he pull that down? And how about the toss by Kyler Murray? A huge score for the Cardinals early in the third.
A huge score by the Cardinals, a huge win for the Arizona Cardinals, who beat the Cowboys 25-22. Great stat, Kyler Murray now 8-0 lifetime, going back to his high school days at Jerry World. And this was a game, Greg, where you just got the feeling that the Cardinals needed the game. And the Cowboys get back into it, the touchdown, 2-point conversion. Yes, there's a fumble at the end that some good luck comes the Cardinals' way because of a timeout situation with Dallas. But really, Arizona was in control of the game throughout, and it felt like a game they deserved, and they got it.
They did, and sometimes, we get so in the weeds, trying to analyze everything. And there was a lot in this game. The 4th down aggression from Arizona was important. The aggression to try to score at the end of the first half was important. But it was also their playmakers made plays. In the biggest spots, Wesley making that catch was amazing. Kyler Murray, more than anyone, making some of his 3rd down conversions were not as scripted. They were just him making a play. Chase Edmonds, who got hurt late in this game, and so they didn't have James Conner in the end. They didn't have Chase Edmonds at the end of this game, but he made some massive plays. They never did get Rondale Moore back for this game. They're down 2 corners and 2 of their best pass rushers to injuries and COVID, and these are new injuries. This was one of the more impressive performances in a big spot, I think, by a team all year because of what they didn't have. And Cliff Kingsbury set the tone, I think, by going for it on 4th and goal. He would have been killed if they didn't get it, and Kyler Murray made a nice play on the goal line. They score there. And like I mentioned at the end of that first half, and Kyler in a big spot, that drive you mentioned, Dan, it just when it felt like maybe this thing's going to go away because it felt like they were playing uphill, he leads them down the field, kills the clock. It was an awesome performance and keeps them alive in the NFC West.
I'm with you. I'm totally impressed. It didn't need to look entirely pretty. I do come out of it, though, all credit to the Cardinals, with just lingering concerns about the nature of their offense at times. They still seem sloppy and out of it at points. And I'd even point to that final clock-killing drive where it started with Murray totally missing a wide-open Christian Kirk. There was what I thought at one point, a delay of game call that should have gone against Arizona, which would have been huge, which wasn't. But then he sprinkles in an incredible run for a first down, a great throw to Zach Ertz. So it just seems to me a bit, the journey with Kyler Murray and this offense is a bit of an up and down ship at times, but they got out of there today.
So I had mentioned the play, the fumble that wasn't, and I'll just give it a little more context. So last, a little outside the 2-minute warning, and that's important here because that means it doesn't get stopped by the booth. It has to come from a challenge. And Dallas was out of timeouts, and they were out of timeouts because earlier in the game, in an obvious field goal situation, it seemed for the Cardinals, Cliff Kingsbury ran out Kyler Murray at the same time as Matt Prater, and the Cowboys were confused, and they had to burn a timeout because they were a little out of sorts. So now they had 0 timeouts. And then Chase Edmonds, I think it's a play, got injured down near the sideline. When the ball pops out, his knee was up, his elbows were up, recovered by the Cowboys right before the 2-minute warning. The call probably would have been overturned, would have been Dallas's ball, down 3 with 2 minutes to play. But because they couldn't stop and challenge, that was a huge setback. And just those are like those little things.
But also because Mike McCarthy blew it, and not because he took the timeout earlier, because he took the timeout with about 2:40 to go, and that's not a second guess. Multiple game management, people are like, you don't take the timeout there. You lose your ability to challenge, but he also didn't save as much time as he could have. So it's just these things that how they used to have the when to go for 2 note card that everyone looked at. We need a note card for these coaches for when to take timeouts around the 2-minute warning, because he had to wait until after it. That's one of the reasons why it's very.
It's just like if the Cowboys now they're a full game out, their chances of getting the 1 seed are not good at all. Obviously, now
They're done.
Okay, so so think about that when they're on the road in the playoffs. These things can change seasons potentially. That really stood out to me as well.
Right, they could be playing in LA. If the Rams win next week, the Rams get the 2 seed, and now the Cowboys could be playing on the road in the divisional round too. I am a little worried about Dak Prescott. Again, there was a couple decent drives late in the game, but he did not have a good game. He missed a lot of throws. It was more on Dak, it felt like, for a good chunk of this game than anyone else on the offense. And I'm just surprised to see it. Just doesn't look sharp, and I don't know if it's an injury or what, but it's just not going where he intends it to go. And Michael Gallup suffered a torn ACL, according to Jerry Jones. They're going to try to confirm it on a second test, but that's a big loss for them,
on
too.
A touchdown catch too, which is you don't see that too often. So that's a big loss.
I also do not trust Greg Zuerlein. I think Greg Zuerlein's going to kill him in a big spot at some point here.
Yeah, it's fair.
All right, let's now move on. Let's head back to the AFC, a game with huge playoff ramifications. The Raiders had a chance to shock the AFC, and they did it.
This will be a 33-yarder. This is for the win. Cole checks his kicker. Good hold. Yes, baby! Jackpot, baby!
Man, we lost John Madden last week, and obviously a legend. Brent Musburger, also another guy that kind of, when I hear his voice, I think about what it meant to be a sports fan in the 80s, 90s. And then here's Brent Musburger in 2022 calling big wins for the Raiders. Treasure our icons in broadcasting. Anyway, the Raiders are up to 5 walk-off wins this season. 5 walk-off wins in one season. Latest was their biggest and most impressive. A 23-20 win over the Colts at Lucas Oil Stadium, sealed by that Daniel Carlson field goal at the gun. 3 straight wins for the Raiders. All of them narrow wins, all of them against AFC hopefuls. And the Raiders, as we said at the top of the show, can complete their improbable journey to the playoffs with a home win over the Chargers in Week 18. Bisaccia a bump? I don't know what it is, but I have to say, like, I don't care what happens next week. They can lay an egg, lose 27-3. I come out of the season.
I don't know. That won't feel good. That'll make this feel like a bunch
listen.
of
I get it. What am I saying? I guess maybe a 27-3. That would be a bad taste in your mouth to end the season. But to win all 3 of these games against teams clawing for the playoffs at a time where they look completely dead. I said it myself. I was talking about them after they lost to the Chiefs like they're a joke at this point. They win 3 in a row, and this one I thought was truly impressive because the Colts had been rolling, as we all know.
I'm amazed. I'm amazed by this result. I guess I shouldn't be. Like, the Colts putting up 262 yards of offense. It's not like Wentz's numbers were like incredibly bad, but he threw for under 5 yards per attempt, and his big play was that long touchdown that should have been intercepted to T.Y. Hilton. So that's a bad game. So we've heard from many players, and there's no way we'll know, but we've heard from many players, okay, it's great to get off the COVID list quickly, but some of them aren't feeling too great. In that first game back, they haven't been at great shape. Wentz would not even admit that he felt poor earlier in the week, even though his own coach said that Wentz was struggling earlier in the week with COVID. So it's like, just be honest. Man, I don't know why you can't be like honest with your condition, when asked. Like, it's become this weird thing where, like, I think politically, like, you're trying to just not even be honest. But it's a big loss for them, if only because they're going to have a worse seed in the playoffs, assuming they win next week.
Well, it's a terrible loss, and I mean,
they have to play next week. They probably would have sat their players, right? I don't know.
Possible. I mean, the Raiders come out of this last 2 weeks before this game having scored 16 and 17 points, got a win in both. I look at Wentz and I don't care what he answers. Like, he did not look the same to me at all. And I do think there's a lingering effect, and I understand why it's difficult for him to answer the question, but what a momentum killer. I mean, this team felt like, and it just speaks to the nature of the AFC, the up and down, topsy-turvy ride that it is, that, 5 days ago, the Colts felt like the most surest thing around. And now they're hanging on for their life.
It's funny, too, because if they take care of business next week, beat the Jaguars, they finish 10-7. The Titans obviously clinched the division. So it's going to end up in a way that this game doesn't really matter to the Colts, that they were going to be locked in.
I kind of take it back. It's not that big of a game, other than they don't get the rest of the guys.
But still, you kind of lose a little of that juice. And I think the Wentz thing, beyond any lingering issues, symptoms connected to COVID-19, also, he didn't practice all week. And I thought the turning point of this game occurred late in the third quarter. It was a 3rd and 7 at Indy's 23. It was actually the first play of the fourth quarter. And Wentz has T.Y. Hilton on a busted coverage, wide open down the left side. If he hits Hilton in stride, there's a good chance he goes in for a touchdown. Instead, he overshoots Hilton, who, again, was all by himself. And they kick the ball away. It turns into a 3-and-out. They kick the ball away, and the Raiders go right down the field, 6 plays, 62 yards, score the go-ahead touchdown. Now, Indy marched down the field on the next drive and tied it with the field goal. But that, to me, felt like the turning point. And, again, when you think about the Colts, and, like, the Colts, when they're locked in and Wentz is playing well, are as good as any team in the league. But there's too much of this inconsistency with Wentz where you do feel like, unless he gets on like an Eli Folesian type heater in January, one of these type of games is going to undo them in January. You just kind of can feel it coming.
I mean, we reacted as a collective group very positively and with a lot of force to his performance before the previous game, where he was throwing the ball as well as anyone. I think it matters if you track these quarterbacks that are out with COVID, that don't practice at all week long, and then they go play, you're going to get there's some of their most down performances. I'm not saying that I want to go look at that scientifically, but to say that it just doesn't matter, I think we're agreeing that it does. Like, right. I mean, at the most critical juncture of the year, I mean, no matter what happens playoff seeding wise and stuff, like, this was a momentum killer for the Colts. And I mean, it's like you do question their quarterback play if they don't get a better performance.
Meanwhile, Carr is in a bad turnover stretch here. He had a couple interceptions here today, but they really have had something going in the fourth quarter. They go touchdown field goal there to win the game. Carr, has held up this franchise. Like this has been a nice season for the Derek Carr in Las Vegas and Oakland Raiders legacy.
He's like, I don't know. Ricky, you saw him in the post-game press conference. There's something about him. Like, I know he's not a perfect quarterback. I think he's on the right side of the Dalton scale, Dalton line, but not to me too far. I think he's in that like 12 to 15 range. But I do like the confidence. Like there's a certain je ne sais quoi.
Yeah, that's what I texted you guys. I was like, Carr's kind of hot. Like his like swag and everything. And he's like, he's feeling himself. And I was like, I'm kind of into it.
Yeah, that dude, he carries himself as a guy.
Remember,
who
he's never gotten
every week.
He's never gotten to do this. He's never gotten to do this. They have one winning record, right, since 2003. And the one good season he had, he broke his leg, with a couple of weeks left. And so he didn't get the, like, this is the best late season experience he's had. And he's earned it. And he's going to be in primetime next week. I'm pretty sure. They haven't announced it as we say, but that's got to be the Sunday night game. Chargers, Raiders. Come on.
I like the Chargers. I like Justin Herbert. He'd be fun in the playoffs, but like, I'd be cool with the Raiders in this crazy season doing it as well. And they have a chance. They're at home against the Chargers, a team that's not really known for stepping up in a big spot themselves. So that's going to be a really fun game to watch. And I really hope it does play out with all the way things kind of sort themselves out in Week 18 with a true win-and-in scenario, making it the first playoff game of the season. All right, let us take a break here and then check in with the Tennessee Titans.
Woodside. Hands to Hilliard. He's got room. 30, 20, 10, 5, in zone. Oh, Dontrell. Touchdown, Titans. Okay. Exclamation point on the day. On the day is right. How good is this field?
It has to feel good for Titans fans. Dontrell Hilliard goes 39 to the house. Deonta Foreman, 132 and a touch. Ryan Tannehill throws 2 touchdown passes. That was Mike Keith, of course, and Dave McGinnis of WGFX. The Titans clinched their second straight division title with a 34-3 win over the Dolphins, whose 7-game winning streak disappeared in the face of actual opposition. And here we are. The Titans go from red-hot start to Mark, a team that could not get out of its own way offensively. 2, with 1 week to play, they are in position with the number 1 seed in the AFC.
Yeah, they to me have been a team that have stuck together through some of the most trying circumstances in the conference. Today, I thought it was an exclamation point again for their defense that never really went away the way that their offense did. And they just wanted, I think, to show the weather in this game was a huge factor. And one quarterback was going to come out faring better in freezing rain, total downpour, and they put it to Tua. I think that their plan with Miami was to get the Dolphins into unmanageable 3rd and long situations, which happened over and over. And Tua, maybe down in South Beach, gets you out of some of those. In this situation today, against this defense, he could not. They're the worst 3rd down offense in the league. They looked at this way. And to your not believing in them, Dan, this is why. Because the offense, when you don't have something perfectly happening for them, they crumbled. And I thought that you could look at some of the guys on this Titans team. Deonta Foreman, I'd start with him. The way that he has run the ball over the last month and a half, but especially today, I thought he put it to Miami in a way that basically demoralized them. Their defense, which looked strong out of the gate, started to crumble and it wasn't a huge A.J. Brown game. I think he had 40 yards in this, but Tannehill ran for a big first down. The running backs did it. They had some up and down issues with their line, but Miami to me was completely outclassed and shown to be what they are, which is sort of one-dimensional. When their offense does just enough and their defense does everything else, that's fine, but they couldn't get it done today. And the Tennessee Titans are so clearly the better operation, and they knocked Miami right out of the playoffs.
Well, you have a small margin for error when you start 1-8 or 1-7, whatever they were. That's a tough spot to get in, but to lose 34-3 when you're 2 similar teams. I mean, this is like the classic Titans game. They have 300 yards. They have 110 yards passing, and they put up 34. I'm not saying Derrick Henry isn't extraordinarily valuable, but to your point, Mark, they've run the ball really well. That's what they do well. It's a good run-blocking offensive line. It works with their play-action offense. It works with Tannehill, and they've survived without Henry. The running game was never a disaster.
Yeah, and even with A.J. Brown not having a big game, He's just he changes the way defenses have to approach the Titans and opens things up for Ryan Tannehill. Julio Jones didn't play in this game, but we know that that's not a big deal at this stage. Let's bring in Gravedigger. Gravedigger, first of all, congratulations. I know that you ride or die for your Titans. And this had to feel good because I locked up the Titans in this game, but I certainly didn't see them rendering the Dolphins non-competitive, which really just speaks to Tennessee really turning it on here.
I predicted a 13-10 win for the Titans, so I also did not see this kind of... I mean, to Greg's point, like they only had 300 yards of offense. It wasn't like they were marching up and down the field the whole game, but they just looked like the playoff team. If it was like one of these two teams could make the playoffs, the Titans are the ones that looked like the playoff team. I think they have been better coached.
They're a one seed. All you gotta do is beat the Texans, and they just won a playoff game. This was like this, and they gotta beat the Texans next week?
You got at Houston.
Yeah.
It could be tricky. Houston could be tricky there, but you should take care of business. And I just think it's such a interesting season, Gravedigger, for Tennessee if they can now come all the way back around and get that number 1 seed, get the bye, have home field advantage. And this always felt like, and by the way, Derrick Henry then gets more time off to get right without the Titans playing a game. Like if they could just survive the storm, they are set up well for the playoffs. And I know you're feeling yourself. You know how I know? Because first of all, 2 things. Number 1, Titans fans. I love you, Gravedigger. You know that. But why can't Titans fans understand that people, whether it's me or anybody else, that doubted your team earlier when they were, averaging 170 yards a week for about a month and a half, doubting them then isn't the same as what we see in them now. I don't know why it's like everyone's like pulling up receipts and showing that you were wrong, you doubted our... No, because the Titans, I was a different Titans team without A.J. Brown and that were gone. This version of the Titans, I feel good about, and I like... So I don't like that element of the Titans fandom, and a lot of them have been coming out of the woodwork again. But I do like you, Gravedigger, getting after friend of the show, Aaron Schatz of Football Outsiders, who he replied to some Titans fans attacking him about his analysis this season. And Graver responds. Listen to this, Greg, because I know you and Schatz are tight. Are you tight? You know each other? Yeah, okay.
We know each other going way back.
All right. I mean, give me a break, dude, Graver says. Just admit your system didn't predict anything accurately, and we'd have a lot more respect for you.
Wow.
Bunsen burner, blowtorch, baby.
Here's the thing. All season long, since the beginning of the season, he's been tweeting about the Titans, and he never has any good things to say about the Titans. They don't measure up well in DVOA and all these other things. So it's constantly like, the Titans are defying DVOA, not like, maybe we should really look at how DVOA is used to assess teams, or maybe when injuries happen, there should be a caveat to the DVOA rankings. This isn't their starting 11 on either side of the ball for the majority of the middle part of the season, right? But it's never oh wow, the Titans are impressing us. They're playing better than we expected. It's this is the worst DVOA rated team to ever be in the 1 seed, and they suck. It's
although you did quote tweet something, I was like, oh, you got him. And then I looked, and the tweet was from September 8th. So I was like, oh, well.
Yeah, well, he was doing his little, the Titans defense is not going to improve this year. And he's never said, wow, this is surprising. The Titans defense has improved way beyond what we predicted. It's we never said that. We said the Patriots D would improve more than the Titans D.
Well, let's just say this.
You didn't say that.
The Titans discourse in general is fairly annoying, okay?
Yes.
But at the same time, Titans fans who are looking get even with people that doubt their team, screw it. What? You have better things to do. You have a locked and loaded team that is ready for the playoffs right now.
And you're going to have more because everyone, when the Titans get that 1 seed, the conversation for 2 weeks is going to be ooh, which lucky team can angle to get that divisional round matchup against the Titans? Because no one's going to want to go to Kansas City or Buffalo. People are going to be talking about the playoff tournament as if that's the nice place to go.
I don't see
so
it
it's
that
coming
way.
more.
I don't know, because Derrick Henry will be back by then, and people, I think, for a lot of people who are doubting Tennessee, that will be the reinforcement that really puts them in a higher class. That's just the way I see it, but maybe
they have
right.
something numbers can't measure, and I think that's what's great about football. They really are more than the sum of their parts. The fact that they've played more players than in any team in the history of the NFL is remarkable. They are so obviously more than the sum of their parts when you watch them week in, week out.
I would say Mike Vrabel doesn't get the credit he's deserved if Titans fans are annoyed about that, because I think he doesn't fit the pristine sort of shiny boy mathematical, wonk head image that everyone's after these days. Like, he's just sort of a bro, but sometimes that works, and he clearly knows how to go week to week with different matchups. And as for fans coming at any of us, I mean, the Titans have been disrespected for a really long time. They could be more level-headed about it, I guess, but I think half of them are probably, it's East Coast. They came out of a terrible rain. They're probably tweeting with like 7 beers in them, and they may not have their wits about them in terms of where they're sending their arrows. I mean, we've got our own, producer head shooting arrows at a friend of the show, so everyone's losing their cool, baby.
All right, well, that's fair enough. All right, congratulations, Gravedigger.
Thank you.
All right, let's take. Let's not take a break. Let's keep moving. Let's bring Nick Shook into the show. Shooky, we go from Gravedigger to the pipe. How you doing, buddy?
I'm good. Despite the general despondence where I'm located, I'm great.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, how are you, buddy? Yeah, the Browns eliminated from contention, but I know, like Mark, you were frustrated by this season, an outcome you probably saw coming, a negative outcome for the season, that is.
Yeah, I mean, Mark said it best last week. It's not deserved. If they were to try to make the playoffs and the Bengals were to lose and, because the Ravens lost, and if they were to beat the Bengals somehow next week, it's still not deserved. So this is the outcome that they deserve, that they screwed around for a lot of the season, never really found any consistency, and that's how you get eliminated from the playoffs. And allow me to be a beacon of hope for the city of Cleveland real quick. I'm wearing this on purpose because everybody here is going to turn their attention to the other team. It's an all-star game.
Got it.
But they're going to turn their attention to the promising team, the team that's overachieving, not the team that is disappointing.
You're wearing a Cavaliers shirt, for our audio listeners, which is all of our listeners.
Yeah, exactly.
Basically. So it's Cav season now.
There's something else for Clevelanders to be happy about.
Okay.
How about those Guardians?
Right. I was texting with Shook about Darius Garland some Tuesday night a few weeks ago. This guy can really play.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we're going to do these games, then we're going to get Shook's take on the Cleveland Indians name change. But let's get to a little Chargers football. They needed to take care of business against the beat-up Broncos team, did they?
Throws downfield. There's your shot play, Mike Williams. Caught into the end zone. Touchdown, Chargers. A record-breaking throw from Justin Herbert. 35th touchdown toss of the season is now a franchise record. And why not go to Mike Williams, who has got more 40-plus yard touchdown catches this season than any other receiver.
How about that? Matt Money Smith, the voice of God for the Around the NFL podcast and the Power Rankings TV show co-host with a nailed-it call, Justin Herbert. He set the rookie touchdown record in year 1. He sets the franchise record in year 2. What happens in year 3? We'll see. But for now, the Chargers are still in the playoff mix after a 34-13 win over the Broncos at SoFi. A great take-care-of-business game right here, Nick Shook, for a Chargers team that stubbed their toe in exactly this type of game so many times in the past.
Yeah, and stubbed their toe in the last couple of weeks with a stunning, disappointing loss to the Texans that kind of threw everything into question, but they responded like a team that you would, a playoff team, you'd expect them to respond by coming out, like you said, taking care of business. So the Broncos were shorthanded. They had a dozen guys out because of COVID, and Drew Lock's playing quarterback, and even he had to exit for a little bit because of a shoulder issue, and you give him credit for coming back. But, that aside, the Chargers largely dominated this game. They did it offensively. It was really a complete team win because they did a good enough job defensively to allow their offense to build a lead. They took a 17-0 lead right before the half and ended up going to halftime 17-3, and it was never really in question. They got a couple of goal line stops or holds that limited the Broncos' chances of turning those possessions into touchdowns, and they cruised to a victory and set themselves up with a date with the Raiders. And if they play like they did today, then they got a good shot, but the Raiders are better than the Broncos. But for this week at least, they're back to the Chargers that I think we expected. The question now is, can they maintain that consistency into a must-win game next week? I
mean, I feel like the Broncos season was defined by those fourth and goal plays here in this game. Like when you have Kendall Hinton completing a pass to Drew Lock on 4th and goal, that from the 1 or the 2 that doesn't go for a touchdown. It's probably not your Kendall Hinton came in. What was that, like a Philly special type of
basically,
thing? And then he throws it to Locke, who catches it, but he wasn't in the end zone.
Does anybody want it? Now that I'm looking at the box score, that was his only attempt of the game. Yeah. Kendall Hinton, if you go for 1 for 1 for 1 yard and no touchdown, what is your passer rating? This will be something good to know.
According to the box score, it's a 79.2.
Right.
You're right. It absolutely defined the Broncos season this year, which is frustration. You could see the potential. It's just that they don't execute. There's questionable decisions in terms of play calling or scoring a touchdown that gets wiped out by a penalty and you have to settle for a field goal in what's already a multi-score game. It made it 20-6 with an offense that couldn't convert already.
Get Aaron Rodgers to Cabo. Do the old secret meeting. Figure out, I don't know if it's Rodgers or maybe there's another veteran quarterback, because I think we all kind of want to see it at this point. Greg, I think a term that you like to use, it will confirm your priors that the Broncos are good. They just need that next level of quarterback play. Another season where that's kind of defined the conversation a little bit around this team.
Right, but also, like, who knows what... I know on paper this defense and secondary looks good, and it is good, but it's like Vic Fangio is not going to be running the defense anymore next year. So then, to me, that's a start over. I would assume after 3 straight losing seasons, which this clinches, that he's out. And yeah, you got some good skill position players for sure for the next coach and the next quarterback, assuming they're not on the team.
I mean, you cannot have Vic Fangio and Pat Shurmur going to Cabo to court Aaron Rodgers. It's going to have to be a completely new cast of people that someone like an Aaron Rodgers, who's moving his entire brand to another team, is going to believe in. And I'm not sure who that coach is right now.
They're also trying to sell the team, by the way.
Well, that's part of it too. I've seen Elway in Indianapolis. Who knows what goes down when Elway's down in Cabo? It must be a wild scene down there.
I'm sure it gets
Chargers lucked out here. Chargers lucked out with all the injuries in the Broncos this week. And
they deserve it.
They needed a little luck. And
they deserve it. The Chargers are one of those organizations that you should never, hold it against them. They got a W and a little luck. All right, let's move on, Shooky, to Orchard Park, where another team was looking to take care of business.
Bills need a touchdown here. In the gun, the snap to Allen. Hands it off. Singletary driving forward, gets down to the 1 yard line, and he is stopped. It's a touchdown. A late call by the officials, but it's a touchdown for the Bills. A 6-yard touchdown run by Devin Singletary.
That's classic play-by-play guy move there. I didn't mess up. That guy messed up. Late call. John Murphy, WGR, with that call. An accurate call. Wasn't on him. The Bills clinch a playoff spot. Devin Singletary scores 2 touchdowns in the second half, making up for a sloppy performance from Josh Allen, who had multiple turnovers. But it didn't matter. 29-15 win over the Falcons. Thankfully, thank God, Shooky, the Falcons are eliminated from playoff contention. But I suppose a little frustrating as a Bills fan to see Allen throw 3 picks a week after that magical performance against the Patriots.
Yeah, we spend time in digital space talking about MVP races we have for this year and last year and many years before that, and I often get crushed because Josh Allen never makes it into like my top 3. But this is the type of game that explains why he doesn't make it into my top 3. He's a great player and they rely on him a lot, but occasionally, and I know it was snowy, but you're the Buffalo Bills. You should expect to play in snow. Occasionally, relying on Josh Allen goes poorly. It's just that, I'm glad we played that clip because that's really what defined the win for the Bills, is being able to rely on the ground game. Something that they really refused to do for a lot of the season, unless it was Josh Allen running the football until the last couple of weeks. They've gotten back to giving it to Devin Singletary and establishing more of a traditional ground game, and I think it's balanced out their offense, and it's helped them in cases like today where their quarterback is erratic, throws a few really ugly interceptions, and one that just was a product of a risky throw that he's known to take from time to time. But they were still able to win. And you could say, you can give them a ton of credit for doing it offensively and going to the ground game, but it's also a reflection of how much talent that the Falcons still need when they don't have Kyle Pitts in the field, because he wasn't available in the second half and they couldn't move the ball. They had 77 total yards in the second half after losing Kyle Pitts, essentially. So they need more weapons, and they've been a scrappy bunch, and they've been fun to watch, I guess, at times just because they play hard. But in games like this, that talent difference ends up being the difference, and it was today.
I think Arthur Smith has dealt with that all year long, and he's dealt with it creatively when there isn't a lot of options for creativity. So I'd give his first year coaching there a positive grade. But I would ask you this, because we just said, if you project enough, you could say Carson Wentz in Indianapolis has like a Joe Flacco Super Bowl type run. With Josh Allen, he's an MVP candidate going into any season. Do you think, though, that we can get 3 straight performances from Josh Allen that are pristine enough to avoid something like this? Because in a playoff game, they're out if this happens.
Yeah, that's kind of the wild card. Last year, you would say yes. This year, it's been up and down. I mean, it really has as a team, and this is probably the lowest point he's had, I think, all year. But that's who they've been, in terms of final score. They blow out a team like the Dolphins one week, and then, a few weeks later, they lose a close one, or they lose to the Jaguars. They've been very up and down, so it's kind of difficult to predict. I think over time, with his progression, you would expect, if he's still with Brian Daboll and they have a little bit more of a balanced offense, because relying on him to throw it, 40 times and run 15 times, that's going to work sometimes against some teams, but I don't think it's really the reliable formula. Then, yeah, maybe that does happen, but it's just right now, not with this season, I couldn't say that.
I mean, this was the classic Josh Allen game. Every possession was an interception or a touchdown.
Yeah.
That's kind of.
I take my chance.
It's just insane. Is there a chance here your Jets can help out the Patriots next week? Because for a minute there, the Falcons were ahead in this game. I was thinking, wow, could the Bills lose? Because the Bills still, are winning the AFC East, but it's not up. It's still up for grabs going into Week 17, and I anticipate both the Bills and the Patriots will be playing, obviously, to win. And so the Patriots would need the Jets to pull off like a huge upset.
I mean, the Jets came very close to pulling off the biggest home upset in team history today, so it's certainly within the realm of reason. The Falcons also are like, yeah, they're 7-9, but they're a whisper away from being 4-12 or 3-13. They are not a good team at all. So I guess that's a pretty disappointing win, but who cares? It's a win, and the Bills are still in position to win the AFC East if they take care of business on Week 18. All right, Shook, I'm not going to ask you about the Cleveland baseball team name change. I just don't think it's the right platform for you, and I don't want to put you in a tough spot one way or the other, so I'm just going to say you're a great Cleveland sports fan, and the people are lucky to have you over there.
It's a great business decision out of you, because the last thing you want to do is alienate some listeners who feel very strongly about that or don't really care at all about baseball. So this is a football podcast, and we'll keep
Sidestepped it in a big spot. All right, Shooky, thank you, buddy, for joining us. Stay warm, and there's always next year.
Yeah, that's true. There is. Thanks, guys.
All right, let's take a break, and we soldier on.
Stevenson to the left of Jones. Takes the snap, a play fake. A throw to the left, looking for Wilkerson. Oh, he's lonesome. Touchdown, Patriots! Woo! And he goes to Wilkerson for his second touchdown catch of the day. Keep this kid active. Oh, man, he gives you a little something on the outside.
Bob Sochi and a man named Scott with the call for WBZ. Patriots are back in the playoffs. Rookie quarterback Mac Jones threw 3 touchdown passes. Actually set the franchise record for touchdown passes in a season. He only needed to throw 20 to do it, and he did. Damian Harris and Ramondre Stevenson both scored twice on the ground. Final score 50-10 over the Jaguars. And Mark, we talked about this on Thursday's podcast. If ever there was like the classic Patriots destroy a bad team that's ready to go home scenario, it was the Jaguars at home. So 50-10 is not surprising to many of us, but I guess let's give them credit. They're not doing it with Tom Brady anymore. So there's just something the way this team practices, prepares, that separates them from others.
Yeah, I think all that's true. You got a very clean game from Mac Jones, who threw a couple great touchdown passes in this. You got a guy like Christian Wilkerson, who's barely played for them, getting involved with 2 touchdowns. Their running game was on fire. I think their defensive backfield could essentially look at Trevor Lawrence in this offense and assess what they were trying to do on almost every play. You are playing the worst attack in the NFL. It looked like it. Trevor Lawrence was underwater from the very beginning. You don't have James Robinson in the backfield. And, about 12 minutes into this, I was thinking, oh, this is going according to script in every possible way. It's going to project out as a blowout. It did exactly that. New England scored on, I think, 8 of 9 drives. They were forced to punt once. It was just utter and total dominance. They controlled both lines of scrimmage. And, I don't want to bring up Trevor Lawrence over and over, but it has been such a bad season that you just wonder where he is at mentally. I mean, we know New England's very good against rookie quarterbacks, but the level of dominance today was like these two teams were not playing on the same field or in the same sport.
I mean, his receiver group is among the worst position groups in the entire NFL. Not just receiver position groups, just any position. The drops, the mental mistakes every week is brutal to watch. And they're probably a lay down for the Colts in a similar big spot next week, like they did the first time they play the Colts. It's quite an accomplishment, I think, for this Belichick rookie quarterback team to get to 10-6 here. You got a chance to go to 11-6. It was disappointing. Obviously, they didn't show up in some of their biggest games of the year, but it is quite a rebound from where they were a year ago, and they'll be dangerous. I'm with Scott Zolak on this one point, if only this. Keep Wilkerson active in the playoffs. I've seen enough of N'Keal Harry. Oh, I know he cracked down blocks on the running game. Okay, that's great. I saw Wilkerson in the preseason. He made some plays here today. It's like they need any good playmaking pair of hands they can get.
And you look at the AFC East, the Bills have a 1-game lead. Right? Or are they tied? They're tied.
They're tied,
in the standings.
But they have the tiebreaker. And
Bills have the tiebreaker.
Yeah.
We talked about the Bills. They have the Jets. The Patriots at Miami. That's an interesting game for New England. But the good news is for Patriots fans, which I guess Greg is one of them still. But, we've talked about that on the show. It's unclear. It eliminates a nightmare scenario where the help they got today, they're in the dance. If they get some help from the Bills, so be it. If they don't, these teams could very well, I think it's set up right now, Bills, Patriots, round 1 of the playoffs, and I don't think it matters, as we've seen, where that game is played, considering the teams split, winning in each other's stadium. So I think we all want to see a third matchup between those two teams, and I wonder if it's kind of
I don't.
It's a happening here. It's going to go down.
I don't.
It would go a long way to putting to bed, I think, an argument that we've had about these two teams as a trio all season long. I mean, we need to see a third one.
I'd love to see Patriots, Bengals, or Patriots, Chiefs even more than that, just because I think that'd be fun. By the way, the Bengals had a Golston today. It's been a while. I check every game. Golston, of course, no sacks, no quarterback hits. Congratulations.
Can you clarify for me, Greg? Because I don't even know sometimes with the Patriots talk what you mean. Like
what?
Do you want to avoid the Bills because you don't think it's a good matchup, or because you would watch it would be a more fun matchup if they're playing?
I've seen that twice. I think the Bills' best game is really high level, and I've seen that game. And to me, Patriots Chiefs would be a lot of fun, and Patriots Bengals would also be fun. I don't need another division, third time around.
You're scared of the Bills. That's what I'm reading here.
I would agree. I think I'd be scared of the Bills. But I think the Chiefs are a tougher matchup, but there would be something about that would just be intriguing if they could ever have a chance there with Mac.
All right. So let us now move to some intra-league football in Baltimore.
Takes the snap.
Rolls
right. Pitches. Throws. Caught. Front pylon.
Touchdown.
OBJ. Touchdown. Touchdown. Touchdown, LA! Odell Beckham Jr. gives the Rams their first lead with 57 seconds remaining in Week 17.
Thinking about that springtime social with JB Long, post-draft. Having a couple of, maybe he's drinking a White Claw, I'm drinking a Tito's with our beautiful families, just living it up in Southern California.
One of the strangest recurring bits going right now.
JB Long, KYSR with the call. I think I might have heard MJD in the background there. Matthew Stafford threw a 7-yard touchdown pass to Odell Beckham Jr. with 57 seconds to play. That came after Stafford and Beckham connected on a 4th and 5 to keep the game alive for the Rams, and the Ravens could not respond in their ensuing drive. They lose their 5th straight game, and the final score was
20-19.
20-19. Thank you, Greg. Another sloppy performance, Greg, by Stafford, but he delivered when it mattered.
He did. That drive to take the lead was the moment like you bring Stafford there for, and I know you can say like he's the reason they were trailing, and he was a big reason. He had 3 turnovers. They were all his fault. It wasn't like he had bad luck. He played well in the second half. Like they had to play very clean and nearly perfect on offense because they were not getting the ball very often. The Baltimore Ravens offense just kept grinding up these long plays, like a 14-play drive, a 12-play drive, a 15-play drive, a 9-play drive. So Stafford didn't have a lot of chances, and they had to finish touchdown to win the game, and he did it, including a 4th down play to Odell Beckham before the touchdown, with the game essentially on the line, and Beckham makes a fantastic hands catch, and Stafford, moves out of the way of pressure. It was like an incredibly clutch play, and this Rams team has shown an ability now this last month to win a variety of types of games and come through in the fourth quarter, and they're trying to kind of build their culture, I guess, their identity of this Rams team, and I think they got a feel now when they get into these tough situations that they're going to come out with victories.
Yeah, I thought the biggest X factor for them was overcoming Stafford mistakes, and they weren't able to do that in the loss to Tennessee. They weren't able to do that when they were thumped by the Niners way back when. And this is a game that kind of shows, look, he will be imperfect, because you're going to get a game in the playoffs where he's going to be imperfect. I mean, he is sort of that dude that throws pick sixes. He throws interceptions in little
He's thrown
bundles.
more this season than Rodgers has his whole career.
Right. I mean, he's
outrageous.
also thrown more than all but 3 quarterbacks since 1950 during his career. So it's a thing. I mean, I know a lot of that happened in Detroit, but if you're a Rams team that wanted to find a demoralizing loss late in the year that would have put us back into a weird place with you, you go to Baltimore and you lose on the East Coast this way. Instead, they found their way out of it, and it included a new face like Odell Beckham. I think that matters. And I think their defense. I mean, I know that Baltimore had their way with them a bit today. In general, the Rams defense gives me a ton of hope. They're very balanced on both sides of the ball, and I have no problem with winning ugly in early January. We're going to mine into mid-January here before the playoffs. I'm fine with it.
Maybe it's time to just recalibrate expectations with Odell Beckham, that he's just never going to be a guy who puts up Justin Jefferson type lines or what we saw Jamar Chase today. He's just not a consistent elite playmaker like he used to be. But again, I think he's up to 4 to 5 touchdowns now with LA. It seems like he scores once every game, an otherwise unremarkable box score, but he has become a red zone threat and a weapon for them, what he never was with Cleveland. So that has been a help for them. We still have the opportunity potential for Cam Akers around the bend. Sony Michel has really played well. Cooper Kupp in an off game for him goes 695 and 1. So I think the Rams, is Stafford somebody you just lock and load and be like, okay, he's ready for the playoffs? No, but I have him in the same class as Josh Allen. Well, Josh Allen's a better player, but what I mean is Josh Allen, Carson Wentz, Matt Stafford, these guys that are talented but sometimes enigmatic type players that can obviously go on a heater in the postseason. And could I imagine Matt Stafford having a killer postseason and them riding it all the way to the Super Bowl? And I totally can see that. So again, that's why you go get Matt Stafford, and they're set up here for all the trials and tribulations of the season. They're 12-4, and they have a chance here.
They're the 2 seed.
They're
the 2 seed.
Can they get up to 1, or are they?
Well, as we tape this, we're going to assume the Packers finish out the Vikings here, and then that'll clinch the 1 seed for the Packers. So the Rams are at 2. They haven't won the division. They can do it next week. They can't have these 3 turnover games from Stafford. He's done back-to-back weeks. I know they've won, but in the playoffs, I don't know if you have that margin for error. But I do like you said, Kupp. This was, in theory, an off game, but he stepped up, getting open, huge plays at the end, making plays after the catch. Ramsey had a nice game. I'd like to see, it's clearly not the passing game that peak Rams could be, because this is an undermanned Ravens secondary, and they were not taking advantage of it for chunks of this game. The Ravens kind of backed off. I think that surprised them. They were playing conservative. But Donald, we keep saying it week after week, he changed this game. His pass rush pressure on Huntley prevented a wide open touchdown in the first half. He gets a sack to end a drive in the red zone at the end of the game. The Ravens were basically on the doorstep of scoring a touchdown and almost putting this thing out of bounds. And then that's the moment where Donald steps up, and it was just like another just Aaron Donald. You probably weren't going to win the game if it wasn't for Aaron Donald.
He's Defensive Player of the Year. For me.
Oof,
Listen,
it's a close one. It's a close one.
We talk about it all the time, the old Francesism. Season doesn't start till after Thanksgiving. On November 28th, the Ravens outlasted the Browns 16-10, a game in which Lamar Jackson threw 4 interceptions, but they still won. And at that moment, they were 8-3 on November 28th. Now you fast forward to January 2nd, they're 8-8, and now need to win in Week 18 and get help, or they end up out of the playoffs entirely. It's pretty wild what's happened to the season, but not, if you've been following it week by week, not particularly surprising, because they just have been absolutely assaulted by injuries and COVID and the Lamar ankle injury, which was obviously more serious than they initially let on. That's how they got where they are. So.
Right, and 4 of those losses are the last 4 losses are by a combined 6 points. That's outrageous.
Right. Well, they probably have 4 wins that combined by 6 points too early.
Right.
In the season,
that was early in the season,
right.
But I'm just saying, to do this in such a short stretch where you lose by 1, lose by 2, lose by 1, and then lose by 1. It's too bad. Huntley, you can see he's a pro quarterback. Like, he's a starter. He made a couple mistakes today that hurt them. It wasn't quite as good a game from him in this game. Like, he still looks good, and he looked like he belonged, but he had a couple plays he wanted back, or else they could have won it. Oh well.
Would have helped my fantasy team that went down in the finals today, but we'll take that second place prize money, and we're off. We're happy with the way things turned out overall. Just disappointing. But I know a lot of people were
when you
wondering,
see this on Game Pass, there were a couple of plays where he could have had more points. They were
don't tell me. I don't need, it wouldn't have mattered. My opponent put up 175. It's fine. We move forward. We're professionals here. On to not great timing for this. On to the Meadowlands.
Ready to go. Brady with 23 seconds to go. The snap, a good one. Brady looking, cocks the arm, throws toward the end zone, receiver open, caught ball, touchdown Tampa Bay, touchdown Tampa Bay, Buccaneers take the lead for the first time of the game. Grayson makes the catch in the end zone. Buccaneers lead 26-24. Tom Brady, you're terrific.
See, it's about the delivery. Like when Gene Deckerhoff says, Tom Brady, you're terrific. That's nice. I like that. When another announcer goes, I love Tom Brady, it doesn't carry the same warmth. Put it that way.
Yeah, there's a lacking of a panache there with the second individual.
A man named Scott. WFUS, Gene Deckerhoff. Antonio Brown walked away from the Bucs, but luckily they still have Tom Brady. The GOAT led the Bucs on a 93-yard drive in the final minutes, culminating with a 33-yard touchdown strike to Cyril Grayson, sealing a 28-24 win over my Jets. The Jets had a 2-touchdown lead in this game, and it was a tough one. We're going to get to the game, but let's start with the Antonio Brown stuff, because obviously this was the huge story of the early games. It was everywhere. Brown had... It's still unclear as of this taping what set him off, but he had a meltdown late in the third quarter. Tampa Bay was trailing 24-10 at the time. Cameras caught him in an animated discussion with Mike Evans. Evans was trying to calm down Brown, but instead Brown stripped off his pads, jersey, gloves, T-shirt, tossed the gloves and T-shirt into the stands, and then walked completely bare-chested down the sideline into the end zone, which, by the way, should have been a penalty, but we're not going to dwell on anything like that. He then waved to the fans, jogged through the end zone into the tunnel at MetLife Stadium, apparently left the stadium without a shirt on. And after the game, first there was speculation that he was benched, and he melted down because of that. But then there was talk on Twitter that he wasn't even benched, but something set the
he
man
was playing.
off.
Jay Glazer reported that Arians, at one point, he was already upset for some reason that is unclear. Arians, put him in the next play. I guess he was like on the sideline, and Arians, put him in the next play, and he refused to go in. And then Arians asked again the next play, And at that point, when he refused to go in, he said, like, you're out.
Okay, and then he melted down. So anyway, Arians, after the game, obviously the first question is not about this great comeback. It's about Antonio Brown walking out in the middle of a game. Here's what Arians had to say.
He is no longer a Buck. All right, that's the end of the story. Let's talk about the guys that went out there and won the game.
See, but it's not that easy, Bruce. It is not that easy because you, Bruce Arians, and you, Tom Brady, and you, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, created this situation by looking the other way over and over when Brown was clearly a loose cannon. Now, I think there's something interesting with this. And Mark, I'll tee you up on this. I wonder, obviously, Antonio Brown seems like he's not the greatest guy, but sometimes I wonder if there's like a mental health component here that makes this maybe not as straightforward as like everyone just saying clowning this guy for being a total idiot. Sometimes it feels like to me with some of his behavior that there's something wrong with him. And then you hear Brady's comments after the game he was expressing concern about Brown's well-being. That's a part of this conversation that I feel like you're not hearing a lot of.
I mean, I do think that when we look at Antonio Brown and you look at what happened on Hard Knocks with the Raiders, and there's a laundry list of things that have happened with Antonio Brown, that it is possible to piece together and be curious about the mental health side. I mean, because there's been indications and suggestions that is something he deals with. And I took Brady's comments along the same avenue that you did. This is a star player who was on a Hall of Fame, avenue at some point. I mean, you can see it. And it's like, that's why he was in the building. I think this puts to bed probably what was a bit of a tension-filled scenario between, not about tension-filled, but Tom Brady wanted him. Would he have been on the Bucs if Tom Brady wasn't there? No, this wasn't a Bruce Arians wish casting. I think Bruce Arians did his best to put up with him. I just wonder, I mean, in terms of the Antonio Brown experience, did he wake up at some point today thinking that, I don't want to play anymore? Or in the scope of possibilities of actions I might take today, one of them could be stripping down from the belt up and running out of the stadium and taking an Uber home. I'm just not sure.
He was well dressed when he took the Uber. There was some great shots of him waiting. It wasn't an Uber. He got his personal.
Then he's fine.
You've taken. First of all, you've taken your chance at a Super Bowl ring away, and you've probably taken your team's chances away because losing Antonio Brown on the field is nothing short of Titanic. I think for the Buccaneers, right, with the state that they're in right now, it's huge. And this was like a experiment that always had a potential high risk, high reward point of implosion, and today it imploded in rather spectacular fashion.
Well, supposedly they were getting frustrated, according to some of the local reports, with his behavior throughout the course of his suspension, and then since coming back, and you could see the way he was with reporters when he didn't even want to answer questions about it. So, you're right, Dan. Like, Arians was I know Brady wanted him on the team, but Arians ultimately made the decision to keep him, which was even after the suspension, which was obviously a mistake. And they're going to be counting on Cyril Grayson and Tyler Johnson. I know Evans was back today, and Gronk had a good game, but they're definitely shorthanded. Levante David's hurt. Shaq Barrett's hurt. They've had some really significant players that are out right now. To
Mark, your point, I wonder if Arians has a conversation with Brady before he goes up to that podium, or if that's something that in the heat of the moment he says, no, he's gone, that's it.
That was to me like he's not even. It's like Antonio Brown quit. He was off the team already. He took himself off the Bucs. Arians never even had a choice. I don't know, right?
Well,
he left. Yeah. He literally left. You know what I mean? Like at that point, Antonio Brown knew his Bucs career was over. I mean, I don't know if he's thinking about it that way.
I don't think he was thinking about anything because if you look at his escalators in his contract, he was with just like normal type Brown performances. The rest of this game and next week, he would have cleared like well over $1 million in bonuses. So I think he's a guy that is a complete loose cannon and a hothead that lost his temper, and probably even if he won't admit to it right now, he knows he made a huge mistake. Now there's talk like, oh, he's out of football now. Well, we'll see. Wait until the offseason and see if another team says, oh, I would like this like top 25 wide receiver in the whole league at a deep discount. Like, don't underestimate the NFL's ability to look the other way. But, I mean, I always think about Chris Wesseling, and the most upset I've ever seen him on the podcast, other than when someone told him to take his hat off, was when Tom Brady and Bill Belichick brought Antonio Brown to New England in the wake of the sexual assault allegations that Brown was facing at the time. And Wes was so strong about that and said that he had lost all respect for Belichick and Brady. I remember there was some tension in the studio that night, Greg, because you were talking, you guys were in a real good conversation about everything about it. And I thought about that today because I've been thinking about, I know as we all have, Wes a lot with the new year, and he's been gone almost a year now. That Brown, this is not anything new, that he's been this divisive guy that at a certain point, you got to put your foot down and say, this is not a guy that can help my team, even if he is fantastically talented. We've seen it again with yet another team.
Right. And one of Wes's favorite coaches too, Arians, one of it, like an organization that, they won a Super Bowl. So I guess they'll look back and think, I guess it was worth it because he helped along the way. But it's like they asked for it and they got it. And I don't think they're done by any means. I mean, they found a way to win this game. And I know we can get to the game, but they've won 12 games and they'll have a home game in the first round of the playoffs and maybe more. But they're not the same team that they could have been because of injuries and now because of this.
As far as the game goes, from the Jets side, really, I know it helps their draft standing, but it's a really tough loss because, like I said, they were, I think, double-digit teen underdogs in this game. And Zach Wilson played his best complete game of the year, and the defense really played well and played with a lot of passion. And I came out of the game, or as the game went along, like really feeling good about Robert Saleh and how hard he had this team playing. After the game, Saleh was furious about the Jets were up by 3 points, or 4 points, excuse me, late in the game, deep in Tampa Bay territory, facing 4th and 2, and there's a miscommunication between Mike LaFleur, the offense coordinator, and Zach Wilson about a play call that should have been an end around to Braxton Berrios, but instead turned into a QB sneak, a 2-yard QB sneak that they were trying to get. They got maybe half a yard. Brady takes over and goes right down the field, and I thought it was interesting how pointed Saleh was. I wonder what it means for the relationship with Mike LaFleur, who I think has been very good this year. But that set in motion the comeback for the Bucs, who went 93 yards the other way. The Jets passing up the field goal on 4th and 2 that would have put them up 7 to try to win the game, call the wrong play in the huddle, or it's executed improperly by the rookie, but it was put completely on Mike LaFleur. That was the big turning point in what people talk about, not Antonio Brown related in this game.
I would look at some of the positive quarters and moments the Jets have had in the last couple of weeks and say, let's build off it. I'd hate to see them in some sort of scapegoat scenario or a fresh change, move on from LaFleur and bring in a new offense, because if Zach Wilson needs anything on the planet, it is ultra consistency between now and next September.
I hate the lack of responsibility there. But hopefully it's just like emotions, but that's from both coaches. I mean, Arians takes no responsibility whatsoever. Doesn't even want to talk about it. When he said he wouldn't talk about why Brown was returning in the first place, like you're always asking your players to take responsibility, and then the coaches don't. And I don't know if Saleh was putting it on his coach, but that's a bad job by him too. Like, you don't want to do that publicly.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't
he mention
anybody by name. But
right.
Yes, it was just unfortunate because it was really a nice day overall at the Meadowlands. The fans were into it. Just didn't work out. But credit to the Bucs. They come back. They keep themselves pointed in the right direction, even if Antonio Brown will not be there any longer. Let us now take a break and then continue on.
Heineke firing for the end zone, incomplete. And let's see.
Rodney McLeod says he caught the ball in the end zone.
McLeod says he intercepted it.
McLeod feels like he just intercepted the game.
Now let's see.
Intercepted the ball to seal the game.
He does it again, the second week in a row that Rodney McLeod comes up with the interception.
Huge.
And this is going to do it, ladies and gentlemen.
That's like such a perfect call for the Eagles as a team right now. They're just like, well, it worked out. That was a good thing for the Eagles. The Eagles win. Merrill Reese, Mike Quick with the call WIP. Is not art right now for the Eagles, but football's not played in a damn museum. Rodney McLeod picked off Taylor Heineke in the end zone with 24 seconds to play. to seal another win for the Eagles, this time a 2016 conquest over the Washington football team. Greg, Philly's recent games all seem to follow a similar script. Slow start followed by a winning course correction.
Right, they were impressive here. I mean, I know it wasn't pretty, and McLeod, I didn't think that was an interception either.
You're such a homer for the Eagles. I don't know what that is about. A 2016 win over this Washington team is a hyper-impressive win.
This is a 2-5 team that you were wondering if the coach might last only 1 year, if the GM might finally lose his job after, more than a decade in that building. That clinched the playoff spot with a week left in the season by going 7-2. And yes, they got a nice break in terms of the schedule throughout that run, but they still did it. And for this team, for their expectations, they did it. And you're right that this game was perfect for it because it was not pretty, especially defensively in the first half. But the second half, when they needed it, there were very few drives in this game. They go touchdown, field goal. They win the second half 13-0. Their defensive line absolutely dominated after Heineke was just playing out of his mind in the first half. And they played more or less a perfect second half to go clinch a playoff spot. Just take it. Just take it. I mean, what do you want?
No, you want to talk about in the AFC, everybody wants to look at, and maybe we'll get the Titans. All these NFC superpowers, give us the Eagles in round one. We'll fly.
You know what? I think the Eagles are ripe to pick someone up in the playoffs, depending on how that opponent's
It'll be like the Rams or the Bucks, most likely at this point. But a lot could change.
I could see it. They've given up under 25 in a row. Now, that came against the Giants, the Jets, the Giants again, in Washington twice. So that factors in. But I think they're built really well along both lines. They can run the ball. Jalen Hurts, if you get the right game out of him, I would not want to deal with them in the wild card round.
I'm not going to say too much more because I have to watch the game. So I'm not going to bury the Eagles for their performance today. But I think we need to keep an eye on Jalen Hurts healthy. I think, yes, I'm going to walk that back a little bit because maybe if he's making plays with his legs in a playoff game, things can get dicey for any favorite. But I thought, there were some comments made by Nick Sirianni after the game that he really thought so much of Hurts for kind of battling through what's been a really painful injury that's affected him in a lot of ways. So he's coming out here and winning games. So respect to the quarterback for that. Respect to the Eagles for getting to the playoffs. I don't think a lot of people had him picked for the playoffs. And Nick Sirianni, who's overcome some initial public facing an underwhelming start to how he was positioned and where the organization was and how things are going to work out. Well, they're going to the dance, so that's pretty good.
Right. And this was a fourth down game. It would have been the talking point, I feel like, if it didn't work. It often doesn't become the talking point when it does work, but they scored 2 touchdowns on 4th and goal. And I think both were from the 2, if I was right. So that it wasn't a total cinch. And one of them took an extraordinary play from Boston Scott. Jalen Hurts essentially gets tripped up while pitching the ball backwards. The defensive line for Washington looks like they're winning. Scott gets to the outside, gets the touchdown, and hitting those 2 4th and goals was kind of the difference in a game that was this close. That both quarterbacks, if you look at the box score, played much better than the box score showed. Hurts, I thought, had one of his best games. His offensive line did not play well for him, which was rare. They did not have much of a running game besides Hurts. And Heineke played really out of his mind in the first half. Every third down just felt like it was Heineke pulling off a miracle, and it ran out.
I would say one thing. I know Ron Rivera is, beyond critique, and we all like the person a lot, but this team has fallen off a cliff. And I know that they've been shorthanded. There have been corona issues. There have been injuries. You don't have the quarterback you plan with, although I don't think the quarterback play has killed them that much. 4 games in a row against division opponents. They were embarrassed by the Cowboys a week ago. They've lost twice to the Eagles now in not too far away weeks. I'm sorry, but the honeymoon period on some level needs to be reimagined during the offseason. You got to go get some real players, especially at quarterback.
Little honeymoon period reimagining.
I like it. All right, let's.
I think it gets some more rope than most coaches around.
Yeah. Can we just mention quickly that the rails at the stadium collapsed?
That was incredible.
Hurts, it was terrible. It was A couple.
Listen to Greg correct you, Mark. It wasn't.
No,
incredible.
I mean,
Sorry, it was a
very,
very sober moment.
It wasn't
today.
a sober moment. It was amazing that Hurts then like starts posing for pictures. But it was, if the timing had been different. Garofalo, by the way, nice job. I think he was the one that.
I don't think he was the.
Oh no, he just sent it out.
Yeah,
okay.
He amplified it successfully.
Okay. I mean, Hurts could have been underneath that while the gate fell on them and all the fans did. If it was like 2 seconds later, that would have been a freaking disaster. What's going on in Washington? Earlier in the season, the pipes were bursting and soaking the fans. Come on, let's
build a new stadium.
When you watch what like human bodies are capable of, because also the fans that fell like face forward down like 90 straight degrees into the earth should have been hurt, and they were up 2 minutes later with their arms around Hurts taking like group selfies. So the body is strange.
Wait a second. I think maybe it was Mike's original video. I'm not sure. I don't want to take it away from him. Either way, that's how I saw it because it was going nuts. And there was an AP photographer runner that was injured. He was underneath that thing when it fell.
Oh, he was?
Not good.
I don't believe it was a serious injury situation, but yeah, it was scary because, like that was, 20 people leaning into it. That's got to be fortified. What are we doing in Washington? Can we do anything right there?
And the Eagles are brought their heated benches too. It's now become a bit in the NFC West that everyone's bringing their benches to Washington.
And we clean things up down there, for Christ's sake. And yeah, give it up to Hurts for that's some Joe Montana like composure to just start posing with the fans like seconds later. I don't think anybody was aware there were injuries at that point or serious injuries. All right, anyway, let's head from one team punching their ticket to another that could, the Niners.
49ers on the 45 at a roll. Trey Lance to the right, has time, going to throw back left on the over route. It is caught by Deebo Samuel inside the 10, breaks a tackle, touchdown! San Francisco!
Great call, Greg Papa. 1G, Greg. Not a triple G. 2 Gs. Double G. It'd be even better if he was triple G Papa, wouldn't it?
Right.
Welcome
he's
to
only
the club.
he's only 50% G.
Sniper shot. KNBR. Rookie Trey Lance threw 2 touchdown passes in the second half of his second career start. And the Niners zeroed in on a playoff spot with a 23-7 win over the Texans. The Niners can clinch their second postseason appearance in 5 years under Shanahan with a win next week against the Rams or a loss by the Saints. That is the setup, Mark. What did you think about the kids' performance today, and would it be something that potentially gives Kyle Shanahan some pause as they look forward in 2022?
I think it would give him a little bit of pause because, he heated up, and you saw a couple things, which I'll get to in a minute later in the game, that give you hope, but I thought that they really struggled. Shanahan struggled to find the best play calls to kind of find rhythm and fit Lance in this offense at first. He threw a bad interception on a zoned in pass to George Kittle. He also had an incredible laser touchdown dart to Deebo Samuel later in the game that you're like, wait a minute. Jimmy G, for all his good and bad moments, could never have thrown that ball. He had another incredible throw to George Kittle that as they got heated up, and I think they still want to be a run-based team, and Eli Mitchell was so good today on a couple of different runs that helped him out, but you didn't see Trey Lance take over the game necessarily. Not that I expected that today. I thought on the flip side, what happened for Houston a little bit, they hung around, their offensive line did a sneaky good job, and they're not a good O-line at all until the Niners defense really kind of got going later in the game. It just took the entire San Francisco operation some time. I honestly looked at it, though, and thought for all of the ups and downs with Jimmy G, I don't know if I would take the risk of putting Trey Lance into a playoff game over Jimmy G at this point. He just looks to me a little slow in his processing. That did improve as the game went along, so maybe you project out 2 games from now, it's a little bit better, but I think there's a reason that we haven't seen a ton of Trey Lance up until we needed to because of the injury this week, because I think it's neck up. We all know he's a smart player. They say that this offense just has not totally clicked in his mind, although he can do things physically that are very impressive.
Well, maybe maybe that's the case. And I know Garoppolo on balance has been good this year. The the case for why Lance should have been in the lineup so he could get the mental reps, get ramped up, and continue to gain some confidence. And then you're going into the postseason with a rookie that has some reps. I know that's all silly because that's not the way it played out. And Garoppolo certainly is capable of getting hot himself in January. But it did make it, as you're explaining that to me, it does make me think maybe if he had the opportunity to get sped up a little bit, this would be a different Niners team we're talking about. But that's not where we're at.
But I think he might. I mean, the decision might not be one to be made. This sounds like a serious thumb injury. It's torn ligaments. He's going to have surgery in it eventually. He never sounded like he got particularly close. He never threw a football this last week. And while I bemoaned the lack of juice going into week 18 at the beginning of the show, the Rams 49ers game is pretty spicy. I mean, 49ers have won 5 straight against them. The 49ers are going to need that win to make the playoffs, or at least to clinch a spot. The Saints will still be alive, and I'm sure they'll put that at the same time, so it's not a dead game. They've kind of owned the Rams. They could knock the Rams out of the division lead. Maybe it's Lance, maybe it's Garoppolo. I don't know. The way they talked about the Jimmy G injury, it does make you wonder if he's just donezo this season.
McVay versus Shanahan, that's just fun because, if there's any two guys on a field in 2022 right now that I want to have like their inner monologue locked in, I would be like when those guys are going in against each other and just mother effing each other like all through the game. I'm the true boy genius. No, I am. Take that, wannabe boy genius. I'm the true boy genius. Like, well, you're both like 40, so
it's the extent of the
right.
dialogue.
And McVay could knock them right out of the playoffs, which would be a nice little revenge for losing 5 straight against them.
All right, so let's move on now. The Saints also harbor playoff hopes as we enter Week 18 in a few days. So let's check in on them.
2nd and 20, back to pass. Here comes pressure. Throw. That ball's picked off right side. Looks like C.D. Deuce right in front of the Saints bench down inside the 30-yard line. C.D. Deuce will take it to the end zone to celebrate, and that's the way you finish it.
C.D. Deuce. I liked it. The late interception of Sam Darnold sealed it for the Saints, an 18-10 win on Sunday. Saints still alive in the wild card race, and this is a game where Alvin Kamara turned a short pass into a New Orleans touchdown, their first touchdown in 11 quarters. Would you ever think you would see that? The Saints under Sean Payton needing 11 quarters to score a touchdown. But even if he didn't score that, they probably would have won anyway because Brett Maher kicked 4 field goals, and the defense was just way too much for the Panthers' completely inept offensive attack. This is a Panthers team that had 7 sacks of Sam Darnold. Cam Jordan had 3.5 on his own, and that's his 3rd straight game with at least 2 sacks. He's had a great career, Cam Jordan, and he still got it. And yes, it was C.J. Gardner-Johnson or C.J. Deuce, was it?
C.D. Deuce.
Who locked it down. So the Panthers, that's 6 straight losses. The Saints pull to 8-8, and they have a shot here.
I mean, I didn't watch much of this game, but I did watch the Panthers' final drive while they were down 8, so it's technically a 1-score game. I don't feel like I needed to watch anything more than that.
Oh, my God. This was not a great game. This was not a fun game to watch. This is a game like, I'm glad I watched it because I don't have to ever think about it again. Sam Darnold can't play. It did remind me that I was one of the people that was like, man, they probably should have kept Darnold and then traded that number 2 overall pick. And no, Sam Darnold's just not going to be the guy. He's a backup somewhere. Taysom Hill's the same thing. Taysom Hill's not even a backup, I don't think, at quarterback. I think he's much more suited to be the gadget player that he was before that. I think this was by far not his worst game, but it kind of is the Taysom Hill experience that he doesn't really move the offense very well, but he will come in with a nice run here and there. So the offense is what it is, and it was good that they got Kamara unlocked a little bit in this game. They've really struggled to do that in stretches this season, but it's the defense that carried them and the defensive line, which is really good, and that is their ticket to the playoffs. They are not a pretty team, the Saints, but they are a gritty team. I love and I know you do, Greg, I love the Week 18 matchup at Atlanta because, the Falcons are a team that would love to end the Saints season in crushing fashion. And I do not put the Saints as a heavy favorite there. I think that's another one of those close Falcons games in which they've had a lot of success this season. But we'll talk about that on Thursday. In the here and now, the Saints got it done.
I mean, the Saints, the one thing about them, again, if you project some of these teams into the playoffs, their defense, when they match up well, I mean, it can be a lights-out situation. And Carolina's offensive line being as bad as it was, I mean, some of that last drive that you watched, Greg, there were two gigantic takedowns of Darnold that essentially was at the second end of the drive. I mean, they are able to.
But they were
rush the
throwing
passer.
3-yard passes. They're down 8 points.
But I think that
couldn't
shows
even throw it more than 3 yards. It was just.
I think
crazy.
that shows though, how the quarterbacks in Carolina have been under duress all year long behind that line. But the Saints defense did it to Tom Brady a couple weeks ago. They're a little bizarre. I mean, it's hard to predict any of their games outside of them being low scoring.
I feel like Saints fans don't even want them to make the playoffs, which is stupid. Just make the playoffs and have some. I know this.
What does that mean?
What does it matter? What does it matter?
I know what they're saying. I know what they're
positioning. It's like, oh, we don't. It's like, who cares? Just enjoy it. Just make
draft
the
positioning. You're 8-8. It's
right.
Is it going to make that big a difference at this point?
Right. Exactly.
I mean, and I'm not.
That wasn't before this. That wasn't.
It's like, okay, we know they're not going to
win
the. I guess the idea is you don't want to lose 34-3 against the Rams or whatever it might be, which is totally possible.
I'll tell you what I wouldn't give to wake up on a Saturday or Sunday morning and be like, oh, my team's playing a postseason game today. Do not take that for granted. I know Saints fans, you've been very lucky with Drew Brees all these years, but it doesn't always happen. I don't know how many Saints fans are like that. You think it's a lot?
Right? Is that a scientific study? Where are you coming up with that, Greg?
Just from one. He knows who he is.
Okay.
All right.
All right. Anybody else have a question about this game? Because it really is exactly what it looks like. The Saints field goal kicker did nicely. The defense balled out. Sam Darnold stinks. Taysom Hill's not much better, but he is better.
No, but I think it's noteworthy that Ian Rappaport said the plan is to keep Matt Rule. But he said barring a total catastrophe the last couple weeks or something unforeseen. So what does that even mean? Every week's a catastrophe for the 2020.
Well, I also think it's all been foreseen. I think what we're watching is not something that's shocking us.
So to me, that says we're probably keeping him, but I don't know if there's some coach we really like that.
I mean, does 178 total yards of offense, 3 yards per play, is that a catastrophe?
Right, the lowest air yards per attempt of Sam Darnold's career, which is a pretty high or low bar to reach. Is he averaged 3.5 yards per throw,
and that's not even the worst.
To an off-season drama or an off-the-field drama too. I think which some have been good at cooking up.
I honestly think Rule's best chance to survive, is don't get blown out in Week 18. Don't say anything. Don't become a meme or be someone that's mocked for a stupid press conference comment, Jay-Z type comment, and just get to the offseason.
Lips sealed into silence.
Keep a low profile, my man. We're pulling for you. We like you. You're a Jersey guy, but we need to keep a low profile. All right, let's. There was a worse offensive performance. It was from the Giants. Let's check in on that.
With time, here comes Quinn. Walks right into it. Quinn's got him wrapped up, and the ball comes out. Giants have recovered, but Robert Quinn has just picked up sack number 18 in a regular season that has been nothing short of spectacular and has set the Bears' single-season record for sacks that has held for 37 years.
This game was about defense for the Bears, though. Robert Quinn broke Hall of Famer Richard Dent's franchise single-season mark with his 18th sack in a 29-3 win over the Demon. The Giants were held to minus 10 net passing yards in this game. Quinn, meanwhile, reached that 18-sack mark a year after his Bears tenure began with 2 sacks in 15 games in 2020. Weird, Mark, weird.
It was a weird game. It's an eyesore of a scenario for Giants fans who have been through it. It's always was a Jets-Giants who's dealing with worse stuff, or one of them has high glory and the other still has worse stuff. But right now, these Giants fans, I mean, this game in the first couple of minutes became as embarrassing as possible. The Bears basically got up 14-0 off a strip sack of Glennon that put the ball at the 3-yard line. Then he threw a terrible interception. It's just like Mike Glennon, who has been around the block. At this point, I don't understand how you keep hiring him. He had 24 yards in the entire game with 2 killer interceptions and that fumble. The Bears offense was not very good either. I mean, this was a rough watch. But I thought it was better field position for them and a defense in Chicago that looked like under Sean Desai, who's done a really good job, I think, in general, like the Bears defenses of old. It's like, we don't need the offense to do everything. We're going to go take care of business right now.
Good call about Glennon. I wrote about that in the power rankings last week, that the tri-state area has seen entirely too much Mike Glennon this season, and this is the type of performance this year where you kind of play yourself out of that backup quarterback land, and it's putting his career in danger. He could be heading towards the XFL. Any other notes on this game, Mark, that jump out to you before we move on?
Not a ton. I do think that the Bears have played hard for Matt Nagy, despite we all know that he's gone. I mean, I think you even go back to that Packers performance just in general. They have not faded the way some of these teams have, and so
some of these teams, like Joe Judge's team, we do have Joe Judge. Some sound from him. His 11-minute rant defending himself when they asked like what he's done to keep his job was ridiculous.
Speaking of keep a low profile, dude.
Now you guys ain't been in the building for 2 years now with this coach. All right, but I'll tell you right now. All right, if you're in the damn building, you walking through our locker room, you ain't seeing that crap you saw before. All right? You ain't seeing guys right now planning vacations. You ain't seeing golf clubs in front of players' locker. You ain't seeing that stuff.
I mean, when did Joe Judge become like Matthew McConaughey in A Time to Kill? He suddenly has like a Southern accent.
Yeah, that was weird.
You ain't seeing this, and it's just ridiculous. He's from Pennsylvania, and it's just the ain'ts, and he went on this huge thing about like how they've stayed together. Like, I don't care. You just got blown out by another team that supposedly isn't staying together. Like, show it on the field. Like,
I think he's gone.
Who cares that it hasn't been ugly? Like, it's ugly on the field.
I know the report was out there that he was safe, but that happens every year. There's always a guy that we're told is safe that goes, and I just think the way this season is cratering into abject embarrassment for the Giants, it just makes more and more sense that they're going to do a total overhaul of the operation. I mean, you could say it's unfair to Joe Judge or whatever, but he's had 2 years and the organization has regressed, or the team has regressed, and it's just like, man, what's the case for keeping a guy when the team's... I mean, the Jaguars are probably the worst team in football, but the Giants are right behind them, and that's really telling.
Well, he started making things up too. Like he said, people from other teams are telling him that they'd rather be on the Giants still, even though they're making more money elsewhere. It's like, just stop. Sorry.
I mean, I think to Greg's point, though, too, like from last week, that suddenly you're not going to have the general manager, but you're going to have Joe Judge if you keep him. And then you're going to shoehorn another general manager in there that works in that power structure. I think that the Giants have to finally get this thing right. And I don't know what candidate would be out there that would appeal to them outside of like pulling Bill Belichick away from New England, which I'm going to continue to hammer that idea. But this is not working. It's dysfunctional.
Why would Bill Belichick ever want to leave the Patriots, once again an ascendant franchise, to try to rebuild the Giants when he's like 70 years old?
Because I think that it would be, if he were able to do that in 3 or 4 years as his swan song, to go back where he came from, to raise it out of the ashes, it would be like, oh, wait, this is the greatest coach of our entire lifetime.
Well, here's the thing.
He's already risen the Patriots out of their 7-9 slumber. So
I was going to say, though, like, he already has that narrative set up in New England, not to get bogged down here. But
well, I think we all need new challenges. Maybe view it as a new challenge versus just doing it with the Patriots again.
But not without Brady is what I'm saying. He kind of already has it set up in New England to write that final chapter.
I'm not calling this a likely scenario. I'm just saying that the Giants would want to be wooed by someone. Like, if you're going to move on from Joe Judge, you're not going to fill him in with some other, nameless face, please.
Right. All right, let's wrap up the pre-Sunday Night Football games with a trip to Lumen Field. That still doesn't sound right.
Play fake. He's going
Neither does the clink, though.
Looks, rolls, throws inside. Touchdown! Seahawks!
What was the original name?
Russ rolls right and he waits, and number 14 opens up under the goalposts from a yard out. And Metcalf now with his 3rd touchdown of the day.
Original name of Seahawks Stadium. Quest Field. Now that's a name. That's a corporate name I could get behind.
A little more poetic, yeah.
That was when the 12s were the 12s. Anyway. Steve Rabel, Kiro. Russell Wilson threw 4 touchdown passes. Hey, Greg, 3 of them to DK Metcalf, buddy.
Send
Look
me a
out for that
message.
take.
Hey, to Mac Jones. He's setting records today. 3 touchdowns. Let's call it a draw. 50 burger.
Well, that was like 2 takes going up in smoke at the same time, Greg. Russell Wilson shot, and DK Metcalf hates Russell Wilson and can't catch touchdowns from him anymore.
Well, there was never a thing that they couldn't catch touchdowns. It was like there was some, unhappiness.
All right. You're right. Okay.
Sticking with
Fair. Rashad Penny added 170 yards on the ground and 2 touchdowns. Seahawks roll 51-29, another 50 burger. Ironic. 50 burgers for the Seahawks and Russell Wilson and Mac Jones and the Patriots. Yeah, Greggy.
I fired them up.
Take's got fire.
Well, I mean, that take only lasted like a day before I saw Chris Sims getting flamed for saying the Jets would turn down a Russell Wilson for Zach Wilson trade, which is really another level on top of mine, which there's many levels to why I think that's wrong. Russell Wilson played great, though, today. It had a very slow start, weirdly, for a team that put up 50. And then I think they scored touchdowns in 6 straight drives. I mean, you don't see that too often. Touchdown, field goal. I mean, that's getting it done. That's eating right. What more do we want to say, really?
I mean,
Mark, that was your spot. You slide right in there with your own commentary.
Well,
that's how the show works, typically?
Not always, but I will. I mean, this what happened with Detroit, because I think Tim Boyle, like at this point, would have been any different with Jared Goff in there at any level.
No, they banged me. I the Rainmaker, the hot streak is somewhat over. I went 1-1 this week. You know, the Eagles came through, so I was up to 6-0.
Ow!
I got banged by Goff. I wouldn't have Goff. You're right, wasn't the difference in this, but I wouldn't have made it rain with Tim Boyle. But that's what happens when you tape on Thursday. It's okay.
Ouch.
By
the way, how about some accountability on your behalf? You want to
What?
come after certain coaches about accountability? You know, don't talk about this or that. You just take the L.
To change. I could have tried. I thought about is there any way to? Because I did change my pick online and stuff when that happens. But at this point, our podcast, you got to live with what changes. So I took the L. So there's 6-1. I don't know if there's too much, but Russell. Okay, Rashad Penny has really run well the last few weeks.
Great.
He now has as many runs over 25 yards as any running back in the league. He either is tied with Jonathan Taylor or he's second. I'm not sure right now, but that is outrageous.
Yeah, that's, I guess, something to look forward to. The Seahawks, former first-round pick, finally doing some things, staying healthy. All right, there you go. The Lions have mixed in some of those grisly blowouts befitting of a truly terrible team with the feel-good stories. We kind of gloss over when they get their asses blown out, but that's happened a lot, too, this year.
Our narrative, so.
Yeah.
Well, it's true. They've had a ton of close losses, and they've gotten destroyed. Ross St. Brown, though.
Hey, he's a real one.
Setting some rookie records, had a rushing touchdown. I mean, this was about as fun as a Seahawks-Lions totally empty blowout could be, because there was a lot of points. If you like points, watch the game.
That's it. A couple pieces to build around. Go get another wide receiver, pair with him, and we're starting to cook a little bit. You got T.J. Hawkinson there. All right, enough Lions talk. Let's move to Sunday Night Football.